All right, for chapter 2.3, we're going to multiply tens, hundreds, and thousands. And we want you to understand exactly what's happening here. When you multiply by 10, say we take the number 3, we know we get 30. If we multiply 3 times 100, we get 300. 3 times 100 is 300. If we multiply 3 by 1,000, you guessed it, we get 3,000. And this is something that we can keep applying. It gets it gets pretty easy when you get good at it. There's all kinds of ways to multiply big numbers, kind of just in your head really quickly, especially if they are something like this, where it's just times 10, 100, or 1,000. It gets slightly more complicated if we were to change it, like to 3 times 20. Now we know how to do tens, but we're not sure how to do 20s. But 20 is just twice as much as 10. And so our answer should be twice as much as 30. And we could just think that that's 60, and we'd be right. And we might notice that 3 times 2 is 6, and that this 0 just sort of shows up over here. And we could recognize that it works if we do it again. 3 times 200 is kind of the same as 300, but doubled. So it ends up being 600. And remember that 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2 zeros. And if we did the same thing, 3 times 2,000, we just get 6,000. And if we apply this to other situations, we might say, well, what about 5 times 30? And we could just say, well, 5 times 3 is 15, plus that 0, and we're good. Or maybe 4 times 400. Then we'd have to remember that 4 times 4 is 16, and we add our 2 zeros on, and that works pretty good. So this is just kind of one way to do it without a whole lot of thinking, and it works pretty great. And I'm going to try to spend a little time right now to help you understand a couple other ways to do the same thing. This is how the book wants you to do it. Okay? So they say each car on a train has 200 seats. Each car has 200 seats. How many seats are on a train with 8 cars? So we're really trying to answer 8 times 200. Okay? But what we're going to do is we're going to draw some pictures. This is a car, and this is a car. And if each one has, this is like one car, but there's 100 plus 100 is 200. So this represents 200. And if we just keep drawing these, and we want to do it 8 times, then maybe I should put some numbers out here. This is once, twice, and then we're going to do it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6, 7, 8 times. It's going to take us all the way to the bottom of the page. Okay, so those two, that's 200. That's 200. I'm not drawing them exactly square. Sorry. I suppose you can live with it. Each one of these is 100, and together they're 200. And it's sort of important to recognize that. This is 200, and this is 200, and this is 200, so it's 2, 4, 6, and we could actually just kind of count it that way. But what we've got here in the picture on your page shows that there's a box around the first 5. And the reason they do that, let me show you. Boom. Put the box around there, and then we put the box around the next one too. Since each one of these is 200, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, that means that's 1,000. So this is, I got a T like that, and they say think 10 hundreds is equal to 1,000. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 10. That's 1,000. Each train has 200 seats. So we've got to have 100, 200. That's one train. 100, 200. That's another train. And so your model kind of works if you think about it. We've got 8 times 200, so that's why we've got 1 through 8 here. There's 200 on each train, and when we get done with the first 5 trains, we know we've reached 1,000. And we know that this leftover, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 2, 4, 6 if we count by 2s, this one is equal to 600s equals 600. And so together, let's have to change colors again. 1,000 plus 600 is equal to 1,600. We can kind of do that in our heads, and that puts that together. Now the other way to do that is just to sort of think about the hundreds. 8 times, sorry about that, I had another one going here. I got to come back to see if we can find where we were. There we go. Okay, 8 times 200 is the same thing as 8 times 2 hundreds. And it's easy to multiply 8 times 2. 8 times 2 is 16. And we still just kind of keep our hundreds here. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 hundreds looks like 1,600. Okay? And that's another way that you could kind of just think through that. 16 hundreds is 1,600, and that helps answer that. Now they do have a third way to do it. So let's look at the next problem. This is using a number line, and they say Bob's Sled Shop rents 4,000 sleds each month. How many sleds does the store rent in 6 months? So 4,000 each month, and they want to know how many in 6 months. So it's going to be 4,000 times 6. Now if you remember the way I like to do it, I just like to think, well, what's 4 times 6? That's 24 plus 1, 2, 3 zeros. It's 24,000. 6 times 4 thousands is just 24 thousands. That's the place value way. But we can also look at a number line, and we should, just to help us understand a little more deeply. Multiplication can be thought of as repeated addition. So we're thinking about starting at 0. Oh, we should actually have, there we go. And we're going to count by 4s. Okay, 4. We're going to add 4. And we're really adding 4,000. If we add 4 again, we get to 8. And if we add 4 again, we get to 12. And we keep going like this. 16. If you can count by 4s, you're in good shape. 20. 24. And so we're multiplying 6 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Multiplication is counting over and over again. Okay, so we get to 24. We just have to remember that that's the same process if we were to change it to change our number line like they did in the book. So instead of going by 0, 4, 8, we're going to go by 0, 40, 80, 120, 160. See, I'm kind of just adding a 0 to each one. Instead of 20, I have 200. Instead of 24, I have 240. And they do it. You can do it again. You can add another 0 to 400, 800, 1,200, 1,600, 2,000, 2,400. Still not quite there. We'd have to add one more 0 to each one. And I'm running out of room. And then you get 24,000. And the same number of jumps. And this is jumping 4,000, 8,000, 12,000, just like going 0, 4, 8, 12. But now we're jumping by thousands. And each time here we're going plus 4,000. 4,000 plus 4,000. And so we can start with just a simple number line and add our zeros up to get it. So Bob's sled shop rents 2,400 sleds in 6 months. You can use that basic fact to solve problems. 3 times 7 is 21. So 3 times 70 is just 21 with an extra 0 after it. Or 3 times 700 is just 21 with 2 extra zeros after it, to 2100 or 2100. Okay, and that just keeps happening. So like 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 50 would equal 40 with one more 0, which is 400. Now this one's a little more, this is a little tricky because we don't want to just remember that there's only one 0 over here. There's one extra 0 over here. This other 0 is just part of the 8 times 5 is 40. And then there's one extra 0. And you can keep doing that pattern. That's what this whole assignment is about. Should be pretty easy and fun. Enjoy.